Pay for Performance, Motivator, Module 5. So now we have reached the third policy in the pay model, and that is employee contribution. So what we are looking at here going forward is the behaviors of our employees. How should that affect their pay? Does it affect their pay? Does it motivate the employees if their behavior determines what their pay outcomes will be? Those are just some of the things that we are going to be looking at in this module. Before we can set up a pay for performance plan, we need to take a look at what motivates people differently. So we have some traditional motivation theories here, and we have them broken down into different categories. So the basic needs talks about, does the rewards from the job cover your most basic needs? And that's things like a livable wage we've talked about. And then we have a second level here that is, these motivation theories are based on the reward systems. So things like, do I have the tools to achieve the rewards? Is the reward equal to the output of energy that I have? And then also, how does this reward actually motivate? And then we have a third level here, and that is desired behaviors. So you're motivated by setting goals to achieve the desired behaviors. So when we take a look at the motivation theories, I want you to think about that and relate it to our discussions in the past, that throughout the career, you're motivated by different things. So will you step through these different levels as your career develops and your needs change? As we saw in the last slide, reward systems motivate employees. So when we are developing a pay for performance plan, we have to have a very well-developed reward system. And we have to think back to our goals of compensation. So we are going to develop a plan that will attract and retain top talent. We want the talent to develop into and continue to be high performers. We want to have them increase their ability, their skills, and their knowledge. So we have to give them opportunities to attain new skills. And then through this, we hope that this all creates a commitment to the organization, which then will circle around and continue to retain this talent. So how do we do this? How do we set up a pay for performance plan with a well-developed reward system? Well, you have to have a framework. First and foremost, it has to fit the organization goals. We've talked about this. The whole entire compensation strategy, we always have to make sure it is always aligned with the company goals and needs. The next thing we want to look at is, what is the return on investment, or the ROI, of your reward system? It has to be sustainable over time. It has to be able to stand up to whatever the market brings, because the worst thing you want to do is constantly have to change your reward system. That leads to very unhappy workers, and you're sabotaging your whole plan. And then you also have to base your pay for performance plan around KPIs, or key performance indicators. And that we're going to talk about a little bit later when you're actually setting up your appraisal systems. You have to understand what you're assessing before you can assess it. Performance metrics are used to determine what you are going to appraise. So we discussed the KPIs in the last slide, and you need to know what are your key performance indicators. And this, you should take from your job descriptions. A well-rounded, developed job description will talk about the essential functions of a role, and the desired behaviors of that role. But you have to make sure that it is fair to the employee. Do they have the tools and ability they need to actually achieve this metric? And it also has to be of value to the employer. If you say, so what? Why is this important? If it's not important to the organization, then really it's probably not one of your performance metrics. It also has to be very clear and transparent. Employees have to know what they are going to be appraised on in order to be able to achieve those. So here are just some things that you really need to take a look at and think about before you are actually setting up your appraisal system. This little slide here says a lot. So in order to have a performance plan that is accepted by everyone, you really have to create the culture for this within the organization. Everyone has to have buy-in for a performance plan to actually motivate the employees and to drive the goals of the organization. It's really super important to train, because as you, the human resource professional or compensation manager, you are not going to be the one out there assessing the employees. It's the line managers. They're going to be out there. So they really have to understand this is the last thing they want to do. They have a job to get done that has nothing to do with performance. So you will see that you really have to not only train them, but motivate them to do this consistently, equitably, and by the rules. And you can see there's a lot riding on this, because as we're going to see later when we talk about the legal aspects of compensation, this can really have a lot of fallout if we are not equitably assessing and appraising people. To highlight the need for training, we have some errors that take place in the appraisal system. And sometimes people are judged not on their whole performance, but based on one or two small aspects of their overall achievements for the time period that's being appraised. So we have the halo and horn effect, and they're opposites. And the halo effect simply says that, you know, the employee performed well in one aspect, so therefore they just get judged, you know, excellent, all thumbs up all the way around. And same thing with the horn effect. It can be, you know, they had one bad day, or they showed up late, or maybe they were out sick for the last week and missed an important meeting, and therefore they get appraised negatively when that is not a true appraisal of their actual performance. Another problem with appraisal systems is inconsistency among departments. You know, how the different managers appraise the employees is inconsistent, and that can lead to a lot of trouble down the road. And then, you know, if the managers are creating the performance reviews, you know, are they assessing things that are non-job related? You have to be really careful that the appraisals are all related to the job, and basing that on the job description that is up to date and valid is really important. When developing your performance appraisal systems, you have to remember some best practices. You have to have this part of the culture of the organization. You need buy-in from the top down, the owners or the managers, the line managers, the employees. It has to be part of the whole entire culture for it to work. Must be based on job descriptions. So before you set up an appraisal system, another best practice is to take a look at the job descriptions, which should be done periodically, and assessing if your job descriptions are current and up to date. Performance should not be a once a year surprise. It should be periodically discussed throughout the year. Employees and managers should have an open dialogue throughout the year, taking a look. So, and then when your managers sit down with the employees, focus their training on, they're not looking at the person, assessing the person. Don't make it personal. Make sure that the focus is on the behaviors of the person. So raters must be trained. They have to be trained on how to deal with the employees, how to be consistent, how to perform the performance appraisal the way it is designed. Documentation and performance go hand in hand. Too many times we see this when it's time to terminate someone, we have no paper trail, we have no documentation. So again, part of the training for the managers needs to be how to create a documentation trail throughout the whole year, and that is based on the performance. Again, coaching and performance go hand in hand. We don't want to have a once a year surprise on the employees. We want to develop our employees. So using the appraisal system, using our documentation, and using our periodic discussions with the employees, we're going to train our managers how to turn this into coaching. So as the employee develops through the year, we're documenting what they're doing. We're taking these discussions, coaching the employees. So hopefully by the time the performance appraisal rolls around, you've seen growth in your employee. It's really important that your managers give timely feedback. You can't have them do their appraisal assessments in June and by September the employee still doesn't understand why they did or did not get the raise. It's really important to give the feedback in a timely manner. And then on the same part, the employee should have the opportunity to dispute what was said in the meeting. Appraisals should not be one way. There might be something that the manager missed, or maybe perhaps didn't know, or wasn't part of the appraisal itinerary, but is really important and could sway the manager one way or other with the appraisal. And then it is really important that it just doesn't begin and end with the manager. It should be reviewed by a superior or preferably HR to make sure that everything in the appraisal system was followed correctly and that there won't be any legal issues down the road. So in conclusion, pay for performance can be a motivator if it's developed correctly with the goals set in mind, aligned with the organizational goals. We take the time to get this well developed into the culture or the fabric of the organization, and we train the key employees on not only what pay for performance is, but what is expected of the employees, and for the management how to equally and fairly assess.